Good morning, everyone. It is Friday, the 15th of October, halfway through the month of October already. Christmas just around the corner. It is beckoning. I have been sharing of late about the kings of Judah and Israel, and we are currently in the book of Jeremiah and looking at King Zedekiah. And it struck me that Zedekiah really is, and I referenced this yesterday, a very weak leader. He came to power appointed by the Babylonian kings, and yet he somehow was more fearful of the so-called friends and false prophets around him. It seems to me that he failed to grasp the nettle, which for me is a bit of a strange analogy, but it kind of says that sometimes you have to do that which is a little bit uncomfortable. I suppose grasping a nettle, especially if it's a stinging nettle, that's if I understand this analogy correctly, it's going to be a little uncomfortable. But he failed to do and make the decisions that were uncomfortable. And that forever is held against him, and he goes down recorded in history as failing to take leadership when it really mattered. Perhaps he was, as I've heard it described before, something of a calm weather sailor. We can all be on a sailboat in the calm weather and say how wonderful this is and call ourselves a sailor. But I suspect you can only call yourself a sailor when you have come through a really vicious storm where you didn't quite know what to do and you were just a little bit terrified. And many of our leaders around us, and I share that because I want to ask the question of you as I ask the question of myself. What kind of a leader am I? Are we plain weather sailors? Are we leaders who can appear quite good when everything's going well? Then perhaps we're not a leader so much as just a maintenance manager. A leader must come to the fore when things go wrong. And Zedekiah could not do that. The words of the prophecy of the Lord as given through Jeremiah had been given consistently. It never changed from the very beginning. And Zedekiah chose not to listen to that, which advice was incredibly difficult. So I kind of feel for Zedekiah, and that was surrender, or perhaps in our parlance now we might say sue for peace. You know you're going to lose this battle. Sue for peace. Take what comes your way, but be the leader because your people will be saved and protected. Jeremiah keeps saying to Zedekiah, if you persist in being obstinate and stubborn, these are my own words, but it's the meaning that Jeremiah gives, then this city will be burnt and destroyed to the ground, your people carried off into captivity, your wives and your children handed over to the conquering army. And Zedekiah was far more interested in himself, and he refused to listen to that. So what kind of a leader are you and I? Are we willing to stand up and be counted when it needs to be counted? Or are we those plain weather sailors? And it's difficult at times, incredibly difficult. I think being leadership, who would ever want to be in leadership? Because, it can be quite tough. But that's what we are called to be. And in a sense, I want to conclude with this. We're all leaders. You might say, well, I'm not a politician and I'm not a this or that or the next thing. I'm just a simple worker or man or a simple woman or a child. Rubbish. You are in your own way a leader amongst those with whom you meet and have friendships with. How are you influencing them? Are you influencing them for the good or for the worse? Are you able to stand up and be counted when things go tough? So for example, if people come up with blasphemous jokes or rude jokes or the gossiping, will you quietly, with wisdom, not participate and leave that indelible example and maybe change your friends to move away from that kind of rough thinking and rough living and bad thoughts? So what kind of leader are you? Folks, have a good weekend as you think and pray and contemplate this question. God bless, and we'll chat again next week.